Ahead, I'll talk with Ellen Shapiro about her illustrated novel, The Secret Buttons. It's a story about two young girls who escaped Nazi-occupied Vienna in 1939 and used their talents and creativity to build new lives, first in England and then America. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ellen M. Shapiro is a graphic designer and writer. Inspired by her mother's memories of the Holocaust in Vienna and life in wartime England, she's written The Secret Buttons, her first novel. Ellen, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
And thank you for inviting me to the program. It's my pleasure to be here.
Tell us about the inspiration behind this novel.
The inspiration was one sentence my mother told me when I was about 10 years old. She said, "When I was in England during the blackout and the Blitz, I crocheted around diamonds and made them into buttons that I sewed to sweaters that refugees wore on the boats to America." And she said, "This is a secret. Don't tell anybody." But maybe 15 years after she died, I mentioned it to a few people, and they said, "What? Your mother did that? That's incredible. That's amazing. Was she part of a smuggling operation? How big was this operation? Hundreds of people, just a few people, her own family, and why? Where did she get the diamonds? And how did she get them onto the sweater?" So there were a million questions that I did not ask my mother. She might have changed the subject like she usually did, but she might have told me. And I knew there was a story in there, so I had to do research on my own. Why and how could this happen? What were the circumstances? And could I create believable fictional characters who could do this?
So that explains the significance of the title, The Secret Button. So tell us about the plot of the story here. What are readers going to find?
Well, the readers are going to find two little girls who get on a train leaving Wien Westbahnhof station in Vienna, Austria, while their mother is waving goodbye to them. And they are disguised as Aryan, right? Which is, I guess, the term that the Nazis gave to people of their hopeful master race that they were going to develop, free of Jews, homosexuals, gypsies, crippled people, people with dark skin, but mostly Jews. And they were disguised as Aryan holiday travelers on their way to Easter celebrations in England. So, of course, a few scary things happen on the train, and the girls realize they have to stand up for themselves. Not only do they have to follow their mother's instructions, carry their domestic servant visas in their pouches, but answer the conductor's questions, and also the SS man who had entered the train when they entered Germany proper. And from there, they land after a boat ride from Holland to England, they land in England and are picked up by a distant cousin, an uncle and his wife, a distant cousin of their father, and taken to a country house in Tuppenshire, a village I made up. Did it just happen to be under the flight path where the German bombers would be coming from Munich to bomb London during the war? And they came to an England that was deep in preparations for war, painting out the street signs so the pilots could not see where they were, making and hanging blackout curtains, digging Anderson shelters, which were in holes in the backyard where all British citizens are supposed to hide and be safe when the air raid sirens go off. So these are the kinds of situations that my characters are thrust into. And as one citizen of Tuppenshire tells them, out of the frying pan into the fire. But as little Rosie says, well, back in Vienna, the Nazi soldiers were on the ground, boots on the ground, marching through their city. But in England, they were in planes flying over.
Ultimately, they end up in the United States.
Yes, they do. They end up in Brooklyn, New York. His knitting is a theme all the way through. They're knitting on the train. They knit to calm themselves. They knit to make clothing to wear. That what they did in Vienna was to knit fashionable things that they could show off when they went ice skating on the pond. But when the park was closed to them, there was nowhere to wear them. In England, they knit to keep warm. They knit to, soothe themselves through very anxious times. And then they knit to make these sweaters that they're going to attach the diamond buttons to. And in Brooklyn, New York, they form the knitting table of their childhood with their multicultural friends at their new middle school and high school.
I'm talking with Ellen Shapiro about her book, The Secret Buttons. And this is not a graphic novel, but it is an illustrated novel. So tell us a bit about the illustrations that readers are going to find here.
I found my illustrator, Caterina Baldi, who's one of the, I think, most famous, and in my opinion, best illustrators of European children's and middle grade fiction through readsy.com, a website that connects authors to editors and illustrators. And I was so happy to have found her when I could tell that the way she did buildings and street scenes and people who were not the little cartoon-like people you find in a lot of juvenile books, but really well-rounded, characters. And I sent her a description of what I considered to be the key scene in each of the 16 chapters. Here's the scene. It's the backyard behind the English cottage. They have to dig a hole for the Anderson shelter. So, and I found scrap materials. Here are the instructions. Here's what the pieces of the shelter look like. Here's what a back door might have looked like in a house in England, in that year. And I sent them to Katerina, and she did sketches. And then we talked about the sketches. And little by little, she added more details. We talked about the position of the characters, the weather, what flowers were in bloom, what time of day or night it was, what the lighting should be, how the characters were feeling. And she managed to bring that beautifully to every illustration.
For what ages would you recommend this book?
I recommend it for ages 10 and up, but it depends on the child. It depends on the child's circumstances. Is every child 10 years old ready to read a book that does have a Holocaust survivor from Auschwitz in there? Maybe not every, but it seems like most of them are. They want to know. And another inspiration besides my mother's story was my own students at a synagogue-based Sunday school where I was teaching. And these kids, they had one goal in mind, to be so disruptive that I would quit and they could start torturing the next teacher. No lesson plan that I could come up with, no matter how exciting I thought it would be for them. And it always ended up in chaos. Okay, finally I asked, what do you want to learn about? The Holocaust. Really? Why? Well, one reason I think is because religious schools want to make Judaism joyful and concentrate on singing and learning in a very positive way. But another reason is that this was something that truly inside they wanted to know more about. They had ancestors who died. They knew about Hitler, the baddest bad guy in the world. They knew about some of them, I would say, knew about Anne Frank, who hid in an attic and yet was discovered along with her family and sent to the gas chambers anyway. So there were a lot of holes in their understanding. And so I gave them an assignment about writing about some Holocaust survivors, you can be this survivor. I gave them some names of people who had made great contributions, who were survivors. And it was the first assignment that they did, and they were enthusiastic about. I thought they need a book. They need a book that has characters their own age who are not passive victims, who are not carried away to die, who live, who come to America, who contribute to the American immigration experience and to our culture. So that's what I intended to do.
So it sounds like this book accomplishes a number of things. In an entertaining way, it's also educational. It gives them more information about the Holocaust and other people's circumstances during that time. But it also serves as an inspiration. So what are you hoping that kids are going to take away from this book that they can apply in their lives today?
That is the best question, the most important question. Thinking about exhibitions and books about the Holocaust and other wartime situations. First of all, I want kids to identify with my character Annie and Rosie's situation and accomplishments and appreciate what all immigrants have brought to this country and not look at them as the other or less than us. Think of everything that immigrants have brought to America, and also not to stand passively by and watch people being taken away, just like the Jews in Germany and Holland and other countries watched the Jews being taken away. If anything like that is happening here, I hope the book inspires them to activism.
To learn more, the book is The Secret Buttons, a novel by Ellen Shapiro and illustrated by Caterina Baldi. Ellen, thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It was a pleasure to talk to you and your audience.
If you'd like to purchase The Secret Buttons, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. Well, thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.